Arming a M.A.G in 2024. A mutual assistance group, which we will get into kind of the definition of later. But equipping, forming, arming a mutual assistance group, that's what we're talking about today. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. So saddle up. The podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, use of force, mutual assistance. All the right way. With Almighty God at the center. Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. Now, I will put in the bio to establish some bona fides, some street cred, as to why you should listen at all, because the answer to that shouldn't be because I have a podcast or because I'm on the internet. That shouldn't be why you listen to me. Also, before I get into that, a little bit of, I hear comments from time to time that why don't you leave God out of the podcast? Why don't you not bring up the name of Jesus or whatever in different versions of that? No, I'm not going to do that. God is number one. If you want to just take God out of everything, like you took him out of school and like you take him out of popular culture and out of morals in our culture, you go listen to some other gun tuber podcast bought and paid for by some big corporate company to push a product on you and pimp a new model of something on you. You can get that a bunch of places. I will not remove God from my life, and I will not remove him from this podcast. God is number one in everything that I do. I couldn't do anything without him. So if you don't like it, go listen to something else. A bunch of weak, wet noodle men that won't stand up for anything, I think is a big way we got into the mess we're in now with the moral and cultural decay of our country. But let's get into the bio and then the topic. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, he got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years. Also NRA certified and some other 3-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, he got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because he chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Now those experiences, it's not because I'm bigger or badder. Certainly not bigger. In fact, I met one of the patrons in real life, and he said something to the effect of, "I thought you'd be bigger." Reminded me of that William Wallace movie, where he's like, "Oh yeah, if William Wallace were here, he'd shoot lightning bolts out of his rear end." Well, I'm not William Wallace, but I am the person that did all those things in the bio. But not because I'm bigger or badder. I don't think that I survived when many other young, good men did not. I give all the glory and all the credit to God. All the talents and experiences that he's given me and the things that he's let me live through, I hope to use them to glorify God and to help you today. So if I boast in anything, it's not in my strength. It's in that God had mercy on me and saved me because he had a purpose for me. And hopefully I can use those talent, skills, and abilities to serve you today. A M.A.G, a mutual assistance group. I guess not everybody knows what that is. I'm going to define terms. Mutual assistance group. And I'm using that term on purpose, and it's not because I shy away from the term militia. I don't. I think for too long we've let ourselves be bullied into not using terms. You can't sit there and say, I'm pro-Second Amendment, but I'm not for militia. Militia is what's talked about in the Second Amendment, an armed militia. Militia is not a bad term. We have been, for too long, cornered into Orwellian newspeak, and I won't stand for it. And I don't particularly like 1984, the book. It's not one of my top 10 favorite books. I think the protagonist in that novel has horrible morals. I don't actually like the book. However, to give credit where it's due, I will give Orwell the acknowledgement of coming up with the term newspeak. And if you're not familiar, what they do is they take a term that is a fine term and they make it so you feel bad to use it. Like you can't use it. You can't say that word. You can't say that transvestite has a mental illness. You have to say they're, I don't know, whatever crap they say now. They identify as an entirely different gender than what they are. Like, that's okay. Like, that's just normal. That's not normal. Right? They will say that, the term militia is bad because at one time, somewhere, in some place, somebody accused some militia of being neo-Nazis and racists. Okay. There's racists all over the place. There's probably racist teachers right now. You don't stop using the term teacher. It's like, to get off on another tangent, it's like the term assault. Assault is not a bad word. If I'm driving down the street and I see some big man choking a woman to death, I don't know, at a bus stop, should I get out and assault that man? Probably should, right? Assault is probably the right thing to do. Oh, maybe I should just sit back and call the police and wait 20 minutes and watch her die. Because I don't want to do something culturally unacceptable like assault somebody. Assault is not a bad thing. Assault is bad when you use it in the wrong way. I was an assaultman in the Marine Corps. I assaulted things. That's what I did. Militia is much the same thing. Could you have a bad militia? Sure, you could have a good militia. It's not a bad term, so I won't shy away from using it. The term militia is not bad. It's not malum in se. It's not evil by nature. A group of armed men standing up for what is right is a good thing. Jesus told his disciples, he who has no sword, let him sell his cloak and buy one. And then his disciples did in fact produce swords, which means his disciples were armed. That's a group of armed men. What do you call that? I'm not going to shy away from the term militia, but I purposely, that's a long way to say, I purposely chose the term M.A.G because you might not be a militia. When I think militia, I think a group of armed men ready to take action as armed men. That may not be what you're looking for in your group. In a mutual assistance group, I think is a broader term. And although I'm not for using that term in place of a militia, I think that it has a broader reach. You might have a group of fishing buddies. Like, everybody's got their nice bass boat. You go fishing on the lake. Got a group of guys you regularly meet together, and you start talking, and you're all kind of into, hey, what if things go south? We should probably help each other out. Right? If there's a Katrina type event, let's say you live in, I don't know, Louisiana, Alabama, there's a Katrina type event, we will band together in our bass boats or our, houseboat, pontoon boats, and we'll come rescue each other if the government is unable to do so. That's happened in the past. Right? That would be a mutual assistance group that has nothing to do with being armed. Now, you probably should be armed because you're a man and you breathe air. And I think you should be able to provide for and protect those around you, especially those weaker than you. If you don't agree with that, go listen to another podcast. But you probably want to be armed. But the main point of that, I would not call that a militia, right? You're not getting in your boats and being modern-day pirates. Right? You're not going to be a navy. You're not going to be a marine landing force of bass boats. You're there to assist search and rescue and evacuation of an area. You're probably going to be armed, because why wouldn't you be armed? Because you should be armed pretty much all the time, in my opinion. But that, I would feel more comfortable calling that a M.A.G, a mutual assistance group, than a militia. Could be both. Another one, I don't know what normal people do. Golf. I don't golf. I could care less about golf. Let's go even more. Fantasy football. I could care less about a bunch of millionaires chasing a ball on a field, wearing different colors. But if you're really into football, and you're so into football that you're in a fantasy football, and you got a bunch of dudes that are into fantasy football, and you talk all the time, and you talk about other things, and you live in approximately the same area, and you decide, hey, if something really bad happens, we're going to help each other out. Mutual assistance group. You get what I'm saying there. Could a mutual assistance group be a militia? Yeah, for sure. But it may not be. What if your mutual assistance group is like at a retirement home or retirement community in Central Florida? Probably a militia is not the right avenue for your organization. There are hopefully younger, braver men to step up and be the frontline fighting force while you mutually assist in other ways. So it's just a clear example of that. I'm not saying you can't. If you're in a retirement community and you want to start a militia, rock on. But you get my point there. That was a long way to kind of explain a mutual assistance group, a group of people. It may consist not only of men, but women and children that will get together and help each other. So a mutual assistance group, or a militia, a mag-litia, if you will. How would you equip and arm such a mag-licious group of people? Well, I have actually some experience in doing this. I have been the head guy in charge of writing policies and procedures and equipping and doing large purchases. Everybody in this would probably purchase their own gear, but doing large purchases, settling on uniforms, settling on equipment, things that can be carried, things that can't be carried, things like that. Let's talk about who should be in your mutual assistance group. And you would think, first and foremost, I'm going to talk about, you got to be a space cowboy ultra marathon runner. No. First and foremost, if you're going to be in a mutual assistance group or a militia, it should be with an ideologically, morally in line group of men. I don't care if there's an atheist who is a space cowboy underwater demolition ultramarathon runner. I could care less if he's an atheist. I don't want him on my team. I will take the soccer mom I will take the soccer dad who's a whole Bible believing, God fearing man who maybe hunts and fishes on the weekends and gets some training over the special, whatever I said, space cowboy marathon runner. Because not that people that are saved and things can't do bad things, they certainly can. And I'm not talking about the person that says, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm not talking about the hashtag #MeTooChristian. I'm talking about the actual Christian that reads his Bible and does their best to lean into the strength of God and do what it says and walks in the way of God and walks with God and fears God and honors God, and God is number one in their life. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of person I want in my mutual assistance group, because that's what's most important. Let's say you have somebody in your group that's really good, hardcore, back-to-back strong man in your state champion, Also, PRS, which is precision rifle kind of shooting champion in your state guy, and he's a Satanist. Right? You want him in your mag? I don't want him in my mag. It's one of the core tenets of Satanism, I think. Do as thou wilt. I don't want him in my mag. I don't care how good he is. If he decides one day he's just going to poison me because he wants to be in charge or because he wants my stuff, right? He's a Satanist. What does he care about thou shalt not steal, right? What does he care about any of that stuff? Do as thou wilt. As opposed to an actual convicted man of God that says you are made in the image of God. Human life is precious. You shall not steal. You shall not commit adultery. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. All those things, right? That's who I want in my mag. So that's the core. The other stuff is secondary, tertiary. The core is ideologically aligned. I'm not talking about evangelizing to other people. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm talking about who's going to be in your life-saving assistance group, militia, that kind of thing. You see how and why I will not remove Christ from the podcast or from, you can't separate it. It's the most important thing. The next thing, you should probably have a mission statement. What is the goal of the organization, right? If the goal is to get together on Saturday night and drink beer and talk bad about the government, that's not a mutual assistance group. That's not a militia. That's just a bunch of dudes commiserating. What is your mission statement? What are your stated goals? And what are your standards? Let's say you decide that you may have armed and unarmed members of this. You may have women and children in your mutual assistance group. You may have nurses. You may have all kinds of stuff. But if they're going to be an armed member, right, standards, you're going to pass the FBI qual once every 6 months to whatever standard. Right, you're going to pass the U.S. Army qual for marksmanship with a rifle. Not that you have to adopt that, but you got to have standards, right? That's part of the well-regulated. If you want the right to carry a gun, you should share in some of the responsibility and duty to be well-regulated. That's part of it, right? Don't be like the little kid that just wants to eat the cookie and not eat his Brussels sprouts or whatever. You got to take the whole meal. You want to carry a gun, that's on you. You should be and I don't think the government should mandate it. You as a man should be well-regulated, well-disciplined, well-trained. Part of this would be having standards. What are those standards going to be for you? And I don't particularly think that the FBI qual is particularly hard or anything like that. But here's the thing. If you have 2 or 3 guys and you shoot the qual once every 6 months, if there ever was an incident where somebody got in a shooting, then you would have the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses and you could hold up the target that you shot. You could save it until you shot the next one. So every 6 months you cycle through a new target and you could say, yes, I saw Jim. He shot the FBI qual this and this date at this and this standard. And that, when I was a commander of a tactical team, I had my guys shoot the FBI qual, even though it was not a very hard qual. We shot a bunch of other quals as well, and we shot a much harder qual. But I had that one just because the average person that doesn't know any better, that's on a jury, when they hear they shot the FBI qual, they think, oh, the FBI, they kind of know what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying the average soccer mom on a jury would think, oh, he shot the FBI qual to the FBI standards. He must know how to handle a gun. That may be a good thing for you to do in your group organization. Right? And have that and have a couple of witnesses. Heck, it's 2024. Maybe have it on video so you can see, yeah, I shot the standard. I met the standard that the FBI has. Now, I'm not telling you to stop there, but you might want to consider that. But the whole point of that is standards. Have some kind of standards. How do you bring somebody into the group? How do you kick somebody out of the group, right? These are things people don't want to think about. They just want to think about, I want everybody to have a SCAR 17 and a gas mask. Okay, well, what are you going to do when somebody wants to leave the group? What are you going to do when somebody wants to join the group? Right? Yeah. These are things that may not be cool. They may not be tactical, but they're practical. Right? How do you kick somebody out of the group? What are offenses that are worthy of expelling somebody out of the group? Is it a majority vote? Is it a unanimous vote? You get what I'm saying. Have standards, have those kind of policies and procedures in place. Okay, let's move on. Food. You got to eat. Let's say food and water. Let's speed this up. We're already 19 minutes in, and I haven't really talked about guns yet, which is probably why you guys are here, because it's gunfighter life. But this other stuff's important. And I figure if you don't want to, you can just fast forward till I talk about guns. But if you actually care about the other stuff, then you might want to listen. Food and water is important. What is your standard going to be? Is it going to be 3 days? Is it going to be 30 days? Is it going to be 90 days? Is it going to be a year? How much food and water should one have to have in reserve? I think for any, whether it's a militia or a MAG, like, you need extra food and water. And you could have more than that, but this is the minimum. And what do you do if somebody doesn't have that? Do you kick them out? Do you give them a probationary period? And again, you get the minutia of that, but it's kind of important. But let's say you settle on 90 days. Everybody's got to have 90 days worth of food and water in your group. Probably should also have a mobile way to purify water in a stationary way. Like, you have a Berkey in your house and you have a Sawyer Mini in your bag. Right, just a way to get clean water. Clean water is a major killer after disaster. It'd be kind of ironic. You have your cool tactical group kitted out and your, I don't know, Rhodesian brushstroke camo and FNFALs, and everybody dies of dysentery, like little Johnny on the Oregon Trail. Because if things get bad, dirty water kills a lot of people. Right, so a way to purify water, both stationary and mobile, that's a big deal. Next, logistics. Does everybody have to have a vehicle? Is that a requirement? If somebody's hard up and they don't have a vehicle, is, Jim in charge of getting Sam to the rally or whatever? Where's your rendezvous point? Where's your meetup if things get bad? If comms go down, right? Where are you guys going to meet? Do you have a normal meeting place? Is that your primary meeting place? Do you have a fallback meeting place? Right? We often focus on the Second Amendment. This is gunfighter life, but, what about the right to peaceably assemble? Where are you going to assemble? Does it alternate houses? Is every month somebody in charge of, meeting and having a place for everybody to meet, whether it's their house or they set up for a place to meet? Who's in charge of that? Because you got to meet somewhere. In 2024, what about the logistics of, are you going to use Zoom? Are you going to use something else? If you're doing like a virtual meeting, if it's not feasible to get everybody together on a more regular basis. So you get that. Logistics, comms, how are you going to communicate? I don't care if it's walkie-talkies, paper cups, and yarn, but you should have a standard as to what it is and when you're going to use it, how you're going to use it, what's your frequency, what's your alternate frequency. You get the idea. Navigation. Does everybody have to have a GPS? Does everybody have to have a compass? Does everybody have to have a GPS and compass, one or the other? Does everybody have to have a map of the area? If so, are you going to get your maps together and draw on there your rally points, your objective rally points, your fallback points, all those things, right? They go in with navigation. If you're talking about a group like this, you're probably also talking about bug out places. Are you bugging out together? Is it every man for himself? If you're bugging out together, where are you going? Where's your alternate if you can't get there? Are you meeting up somewhere on the route? That'd be a rally point. You get the idea. Logistics, navigation, compass, maps. Does everybody, so you might, everybody's got to have a compass. Does everybody know how to read a compass? Does everybody know how to shoot an azimuth? Does everybody know how to do not great, like special forces kind of orienteering in the jungle, but can they do basic land navigation? Because if not, you should probably get that squared away. It doesn't matter if everybody has a compass if everybody doesn't know how to use a compass. Maybe one of your first exercises is everybody goes geocaching, right? And the ones who can't figure it out, the other ones help them. All right, now whether it's a mutual assistance group or it's a militia, proper militia, you should have some kind of uniform. And this is kind of what started this whole snowball in my head. And back when I had a group of guys that would get together if something bad happened, I settled on just like field jackets, Alpenflage, which is like a Swiss, I'm going to call it Gucci flage. It doesn't look like a tactical camouflage pattern. It was used by a military, but if you ever see it, it's like blue and red. It's very unique. It also blends in nature, but it's also unique enough that if you're in a big crowd of people, you'll be able to pick somebody out and say, oh, there's Jim. Because apparently now Jim's in the MAG, because I've mentioned the name Jim several times. I don't even know a Jim. But Jim's, hey, there's there's Jim in a Alpenflage field jacket, right? Alpenflage is, I'm not saying you have to pick that, but what I'm saying is the criteria, I think, should be, it doesn't scream tactical operator unless that's what you're going for, right? Not everybody needs black multicam with knee pads. But it helps you identify the person. It also can help you blend in with the environment. So this could be anything from a beige and black paisley shirt. Like everybody's got to have a beige and beige and black plaid paisley shirt. I don't care what it is, but the whole point of camouflage is it breaks up your outline. Here's a dirty little secret the camo industry, the big camo, may not want you to know about, right? I'm going to break into the conspiracy theory here, but most animals can't even see color, right? And it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter. You can hunt in a plaid flannel shirt. People have been doing it for a long time, and deer don't suddenly have supervision. If you want to, especially if you live in like the West or the Pacific Northwest, plaid flannel shirt, right? You could, and I wouldn't make it a super common color. Like I wouldn't make it red and black plaid. One, because red stands out, and two, because that's super common. The whole point of this is so you can identify people. So you might want to make it, I don't know, like a brown and green plaid flannel shirt. And that's like the uniform. If things go down, everybody wears that uniform. That way you can tell who's on your team. It is real quick and real basic. Also, if you're assisting other people, people know, hey, look out for, if you need medical attention, the guys in the beige and black paisley shirts, they've got medical experience, go to them. It's just a real basic uniform. Also, you just don't look like a bunch of random dudes. If you have to do something as a group, you'll be identified as a group. And there's a psychological effect to that. And again, I don't care what it is. It could be gray polo shirts tucked into khaki pants. It's a fine uniform. Nothing wrong with it. If you want to go gray, it depends on what you're going for in your organization. If you want camo, just settle on a camo. And I would recommend not a current military pattern and not something so ubiquitous like M.A.G whatever woodland. Like I got issued when I first joined the Marine Corps with my black leather polished boots in the desert. My woodland camo, right? Probably not that because it's so common, but something else. I don't care if it's Alpenflage. I don't care if it's Tropentarn. I don't care if it's Rhodesian brushstroke, right? All those would kind of fit the bill as to they still help you blend in the environment if that's what you're going for, but they're also not so common that you're probably not going to just see a random dude walking around with a Rhodesian brushstroke field jacket, which is probably not a thing. Whereas if you went with like Realtree or Mossy Oak in the South, that's kind of like the uniform of the day in many places at Walmart. So it's kind of like a cultural thing. Like even when you go in the South and there's places where there's like no, you might go somewhere where there's like no unpaved roads and a bunch of people have big jacked up trucks with like lights underneath, which I don't get. But hey, it's just part of the culture is what I'm saying. You might go somewhere where half the people have Mossy Oak and half the people have Realtree. That's probably not what you want to pick for a uniform because everybody has it. It ceases to be a uniform. It ceases to kind of do its purpose. But you get the idea there. Some kind of uniform standard. You could just make it shirts. You could just make it jackets. You could make it jackets and pants. I would recommend if it's pants, something like some kind of khaki colored pant because it goes with pretty much anything. You can run, khaki pants at the range. You can run them in a business suit if you dress right with like a pale blue sport coat and a tie. Ask me how I know. You can go hunting in them and whatever, right? And it just depends on you. If you're somewhere super cold, if you're in the, eastern North Dakota, maybe a bomber jacket for half the year is part of your uniform. Everybody in a bomber jacket because they're awesome. They're super warm and they're not super common, like I'm talking about a real bomber jacket with lambskin on the inside. Right, so something like, you get the idea. Just some kind of uniform for whatever purpose you want. If you live in a warm climate, Texas, Florida, maybe Hawaiian shirt, and not like the obnoxious bright colored Hawaiian shirts, but like a subdued, like gray and beige, gray and tan, green and tan kind of Hawaiian shirt. Just something that's unique that if 5 people have them, it's easy to identify. These 5 people are in a group, but also you're not wearing blaze orange, so if something happens, you can still hide. Anyway, you pick your own uniform, but you should probably have one. The next thing we're getting closer to the tactical stuff. Settle down, guys. The next thing we're going to talk about is packs. I would recommend for this 2, that's kind of my system, you can adopt it or not, but I have what's called like a baby bug out bag that usually rides behind me on the seat of the truck. I wouldn't consider it EDC. A lot of people will call it an EDC bag, but I don't because it's not on me all the time. You get nitpicky about that, but this is probably the bare minimum you'd want to have for any mutual assistance group. I don't care if it's a satchel. I don't care if it's a laptop bag. You can make these all the same, or these could all be different, whatever anybody likes. It could be a small day bag. I like a small sling bag because I also keep in the truck my big bug out bag, which we'll probably get to. I won't go exhaustively on the contents of that. But I can sling the big bag on my back, and I can sling the smaller bag across my front. And when I get a chance, I can just throw that in the bigger bag. But you probably want to have some kind of mandate. First of all, everybody's EDC. Does everybody need to be armed? If so, how do you spot check that and how do you chastise that if they're not? But like EDC, bare minimum, you got to have a tourniquet, a knife, a gun, and a smartphone with some kind of encrypted communication so we can all communicate on it. Like, I'm just picking at random, right? That is your minimum that you have to have EDC in this group. And I'm not saying that should be your EDC. Whatever your EDC is, pick one, right? But probably a knife and a gun and a tourniquet. Whatever else you want to build off on that is fine. And then in your bag, right, what is the bare minimum you need? If something goes down, like let's say most of the people, you all live in some giant people hive. Dallas-Fort Worth metro people hive. If something goes down, there may not be time for everybody to go home and get their kit and come back. That may defeat the purpose. If you guys have to work as a team to get out of that city, you need to meet up and you need to have this bag somewhere you can sprint to it. Like if you work in a cubicle, like the cubicle life, then you got to be able to sprint or either have it in your cubicle or go to your locker or go to your car on the way out, because if something really bad happens in a big city, you're probably not going to be able to take your car. That's why physical standards should probably be a thing. But anyway, you grab this bag and you link up again at your rally point and you help each other get out of the city. You help each other pull security. Maybe you just dictate in your EDC, you just have to have a handgun. Don't care what it is. If you want it to be one of the worst practical handguns for most modern life, they just want to carry a 22 Derringer, whatever, as long as it meets the criteria. But in this bag, you shall have a full-size fighting handgun with 2 spare magazines, right? Let's just say that is your group thing. You have to have a full-size fighting handgun, right? 2 spare magazines, another tourniquet, a basic medical kit with more than just a tourniquet. I'm talking trauma dressings, antibiotic ointment. You get the idea. You could have a group medic, but at the bare minimum, you're going to have this, and this little bag is where you're going to keep your map and your compass for the area with our rally point circled on it, and our objective rally point in case the first one is no longer there, it's underwater, it's flooded, it's bombed, whatever. We have an objective rally point. It'd be pretty clear that we can't go to the first one, we go to the second one. You would have the other core stuff in this small bag that people have with them all the time. Because I've lived through, I got to stop saying that. Cause is not a word. Because I've lived through some pretty nasty stuff, both overseas and CONUS here in America. Part of my background, you might have imagined, I've dealt with civil unrest and rioting and cities descending into just horrible, horrible states. Bad things often happen quickly, right? If you have an hour commute or a 45-minute commute from your house to the city where you work, if something bad happens in the city, you're probably not going home and getting your bag and going back to the city. That's not how that works. So at minimum, you might want to dictate you have a small bag with you. So that basic stuff in there. And whatever makes sense for your group, right? Also, some things, if you live in an urban, suburban area, that in that small bag, I would dictate, this is one of the things in the standards, lock picks, and not for anything nefarious, right? If you have to get out of a burning building, and it's the kind of door you can't kick down, lock picks might be kind of nice. Anyway, like something like lock picks, a good flashlight, if that's not part of your EDC, a decent amount of 550 cord. You get the idea. The basics in the small bag. My small bag is about the size of a basketball. Not even all the way full of air, but like if you have to inflate a basketball, that's about the size of my bag, to give you an idea. Then are you going to mandate that everybody has a truck gun? I would say yes, you're a man, you should probably have a truck gun or a Prius gun, whatever you drive. I'm not here to judge. You should probably have a better fighting option if this is going to be more of the militia type, more of a martial group than a knitting circle. Then you should have some kind of long gun in your vehicle. Active shooters are sadly a thing nowadays. If you need to stop an active shooter, if you have to, you may not want to do that with your LCP. You may want a full-size fighting option. So you might mandate whatever that is for you. And the requirement, I'm big on, especially when I was a commander of a tactical team, I didn't mandate everybody carry a Glock 19. One, because I think that's a really old, antiquated, outdated gun. There's way better options. But two, I wanted people to use what they were the best with. I hired purposely legitimate professional gunfighters. And if they would rather run something else, if they were good with it, we had really hard quals. It was not my organization. I was blessed to serve as the commander of that organization, and I wrote policies and stuff, but we had a very hard qual. That would determine and weed out people that just wanted to carry some crazy gun or something like that. The qual was hard enough that people weren't just going to carry something weird because they wanted some weird gun. You always got the guy that wants to, well, not always, but you sometimes have guys that just want to run some weird thing because it's weird. But if their job depends on it, probably they're going to use what they're best with. Anyway, I'm big on freedom to let the men in your organization choose what they want to carry. But maybe you just want to mandate a truck gun, a long gun in your truck gun. I don't care if it's an old school Remington 870 Wingmaster with buckshot, slugs, and birdshot and less lethal. I don't care if it's a high point 10mm carbine, right? Some kind of full size long gun, a fighting arm, a long gun. And again, whatever you want to, if you want to mandate everybody has to have an AR and then they can have something else if they want. You're going to join up and operate as a well-regulated militia, as a fire team to serve in that role, and you want to standardize on a certain thing. That's fine. You do you, but you get the idea there. Maybe in your vehicle, if that is the criteria, in your vehicle you have your long gun. Because again, if you're all in the city and something bad happens, and your safe Queen Daniel defense is in a safe. If it's in a safe 35 miles away, then it's a little bit better than being on the moon. It's not really going to be germane to your situation, right? Probably not going to save you if there's rioting, looting, civil unrest, or an organized group of mass Islamic terrorists that are going to do horrible, unspeakable things to women, use their body without consent, parachuting in and gliding in on paragliders. That would never happen, right? Except it just happened to a nation not that long ago. But you get the idea. If you need to deal with that and your Daniel defense is home in the safe, who cares, right? Not really going to help you. So, a truck gun. I did a whole series on truck guns. It was so popular. So I did a whole, I remember if it's 4 or 5 part series on truck guns. So whatever flavor of truck gun you want, you can go look at that series. But you might want to mandate a truck gun. Since we're on stuff in the vehicle, you may want to dictate that everybody should have some kind of decent fixed blade knife, right? That's, if you're interested in this kind of group, you probably have one, let's be honest. Probably should have one in your car, a decent fixed blade knife. But then you also may want to dictate some other stuff. And especially if you're in a more rural area, we talked about urban areas, but in a more rural area, if there's a big storm, there's a chance there's going to be quite a few obstructions in the road. It could be broken down vehicles. It could be trees that have fallen off the road. If you're a mutual assistance group and your buddy can't get out of his driveway, right? You're not much mutual assistance. Maybe one person in the group, especially if they have experience, should have a chainsaw. Maybe you want to dictate, if you live in a really rural area, everybody has a small chainsaw in their truck ready to go. Maybe they have to have either a chainsaw or an axe. So if there's a big tree in the road, it might take them a while, but at least they'll be able to get out eventually. You might want to dictate only every other person needs a fireman's axe in their truck. But everybody needs a shovel because it snows a lot where you are, right? That not everything is guns, right? You have the coolest guns in your truck. If you're stuck in a snowbank because you slid off the road and you can't dig yourself out, you freeze to death with a really cool gun. Good job. But again, other stuff, vehicle recovery stuff, right? If you have a truck, you should probably have a tow rope. But even if you have a car, even if you have a Prius, you should probably have, I don't know, can you pull out a Prius? Some modern cars actually don't have like an attachment point to actually pull you out. That's sad. Maybe that's part of your requirement. I don't know. But if you have most cars, you should probably have a tow rope, because even if you're stranded, a truck might come by, but they don't have a rope. They don't have a tow rope. They don't have a tow chain. They don't have a tow strap. You should have one of those options so that they can pull you out, even if you aren't capable of pulling somebody else out. So maybe that's something. Everybody in their vehicle has a tow strap. They're cheap. They're affordable. They can be used for other things too. You can use them to drag a casualty, right? But some kind of vehicle recovery thing in every vehicle. And some kind of basic toolkit. Again, fixed blade knife, fireman's axe, shovel and trenching tool, stuff like that. And you may want to get the more specialized stuff for your area, right? If you live in a town that has a nuclear power plant, and that might be a major target for a terrorist organization, and something happens and there might be fallout, you may want some potassium iodide in your center console. Maybe that's germane to you. Maybe it's not. Maybe you live in an area where if every major city in the U.S. gets nuked, then you're going to be fine because you're not downwind of any of those. So that probably doesn't apply to you. So you get what I'm saying. If you live in an area with lots of snow, maybe you want to dictate everybody's got to have chains. If you live in the desert Southwest, you may want to dictate that not only does everybody have a mobile water filter because water's hard to come by in the Sonoran Desert and the Mojave Desert, everybody's got to keep 10 gallons, 2 jerry cans, not the gasoline jerry cans. Don't put water in gas cans. I guess I shouldn't have to say that. But 2 big 5-gallon water cans or more of water in their vehicle, because in the desert Southwest, that's a major killer. So again, stuff germane to you. If you live in the desert Southwest, probably water is something that should be in your vehicle. All right, don't be the guy that lives in Phoenix and has the coolest gun in their truck and doesn't have any water in there. Priorities are probably a little askew in that situation, right? All right, now let's transition into more of the tactical kit and gun guy type stuff. This is gunfighter life. I've been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. If you are one or want to get into that kind of arena or be prepared for all manner of contingencies, how are you going to dictate your group if you're going to be part of a group, right? Or you're thinking about philosophizing about, I know that's not a word, it's a joke, about forming a group. Standards. Maybe you want to dictate that everybody has to have 9mm. Maybe you dictate that it can be 940 or 45 for a handgun. But you dictate that everybody has to have, in addition to the normal concealed carry setup, they need to have an overt carry kit. A covert carry system, which is normal everyday EDC concealed carry, and an overt kit, meaning a gun belt. And on your gun belt, you have to have your handgun, 2 spare magazines, maybe whatever you want to do, a set of flexi cuffs, a tourniquet or a medical kit, a place to put a spare rifle magazine, and that's your minimum. You can do more, but you have to have that on your gun belt. And then you decide maybe everybody needs body armor, maybe they don't. If they have body armor, what color is it going to be? Is it going to be Cody Brown? Is it going to be some other color? I really don't like black as tactical as it was in the 80s. It's probably one of the worst colors for blending in. So just my advice, don't go black. But right? But body armor, does everybody have to have it? Do they just need to have it at their house? They need to keep it in their car? Do they need to have it in like some kind of tote with everything together? You're going to have to dictate that. Also, we talked about uniform earlier, so we won't rehash that. Footwear is super important. Not that everybody has to have the same, but it should be good, decent footwear. That should be part of your standards. And again, a long gun. What are you going to do? Are you going to mandate everybody has to have an AR? Are you going to mandate everybody has to have a Daniel Defense Mark 18? Are you going to mandate that everybody has to have an AR? Are you going to mandate that everybody just has to have a rifle that takes AR STANAG magazines? But it could be anything. It could be a Tavor if they want. Are you going to mandate that some guys can run 308 if they want? If they want to rock a 308, an AR-10, they can do that. Is one guy your designated 308 guy? Is one guy your designated shotgun guy, and they get an exemption from the AR criteria because they're going to be the shotgun dude? They're going to carry the breaching rounds. They're going to carry the less lethal rounds. You get the idea. These are the SOP, standard operating procedures, that you probably want to hash out as far as equipment and tactics go. Are you going to mandate that everybody has to have night sights on their, maybe not on their CCW, but everybody's got to have night sights on their fighting handgun? What about other gun and type gear, especially if you live in a rural area? If you live in an urban people hive east of the Mississippi, hunting for food, probably not a great idea. Probably want to have that food stored. But in other areas, maybe, or maybe even in the east of the Mississippi, you want to do, small game is going to be part of your thing. So everybody's got to have a 22. Also, you might just want to have a 22 handgun and long gun mandated so you can train without spending a ton of money, unless you're just like the Make It Rain MAG. That's like the name of your group, the Make It Rain MAG. Everybody, that's your criteria. Everybody in the MAG's got to make six figures. In which case, it doesn't really matter because you don't really need to save money with training, but you get the idea. You're going to mandate that everybody's got to have a 22 rifle, a 22 handgun. And then what about the big bag? Probably everybody in any of these organizations is going to have a bigger bag. What's the minimum that needs to go in that bag? Which goes back to standards, right? Everybody should probably be able to ruck, I just pick a standard, 3 miles with 20% of your body weight. Period. Like that, maybe that you want to make that your minimum standard for physicality. You got to be able to hike 3 miles with 20% of your body weight and do, 20 push-ups with the pack on, right? Whatever the case is, or full kit and your bag, whatever your physical standard is going to be, right? Maybe you should, if that's the kind of group you're going for, not that you have to, right? If you're doing the Knitting Circle Mutual Assistance Group or the Shady Cedar Ridge Retirement Home Mutual Assistance Group, I'm not putting that down. You may not want any physical standards in there because Jim's on his second bad knee replacement. Right, so you get the idea. But if you're going to have it, what's your physical standards? And then in the big bag, what's your minimum to go in there? You need 3 days of food in there. How much water are you going to carry? That really depends on your environment, right? Again, if you live in Phoenix, probably should have a lot more water in your bag than if you live in, say where I am in North Idaho, where it'd be hard for me to not be able to walk somewhere and find water. Are you going to mandate wherever the bag is, whether it's you mandate the big bag can stay at home or stays in the truck, how much extra ammo has to be in there, right? As opposed to your loadout. Like if you say everybody's got to have 4 AR mags or 6 AR mags or whatever. What about the other ammo? You got to have a minimum of, 500 rounds of X caliber, of your main go-to caliber. Where does that go? Where does that stay? Do you just have to have it somewhere in theory? How much of it should be in your bag, right? If you're taking your big bag, if any. We talked about food and water. We talked about stuff in your little bag, but do you need rope in your big bag? Do you need a hatchet? Do you need every other guy to have a hatchet and every other guy has an entrenching tool, some kind of shovel? Those shovels come in really handy if you're living out in the bush in the wilderness. Trust me, shovels come in handy a lot. Especially for sanitation, because that's a real thing and that's a real killer. A lot of people don't think about that. But if you're staying somewhere in a group and the grid is down, sanitation's a big deal. And this is not the place to go through an exhaustive list of everything that goes in a big bag. But you might want to dictate you have to have one spare change of clothes. Maybe you need a spare uniform. Maybe you don't. Maybe it just needs to be a spare change of clothes. Maybe it needs to be rain gear if you live in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe mandatory rain gear, right? Maybe that's part of your mandatory thing in your pack. If you, live somewhere real thick and brushy, maybe you want to mandate a machete. Don't overlook the socks. Like, everybody needs to have at least 2 extra pairs of socks in their pack, period. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes in the pack, and this would be a crazy... It's already getting to be a long episode. I'm probably going to start wrapping it up, but you get the idea. Have some kind of standards, have different systems, not just what does somebody need to have, because they have a bunch of stuff, again, and it's at home, locked in their bedroom, and you're 90 miles away from your bedroom. That stuff may as well not exist to you in a disaster, because you're probably not going to bring it into play. Don't just be the group that's like, everybody's got to have an AR, and everybody has an AR, and then Jim's AR has never been zeroed. Or he's got a red dot that he forgot to turn off, and now the battery's dead, or the battery is supposed to last 10,000 hours, but it's in his truck, and the truck got super hot, and the battery exploded, and there's no requirement in your bylaws that every AR-15 has to have backup iron sights. Right? That probably should be in there. That way, if his red dot bursts because it's in the back of his truck in the summer, then you take it off, throw it away, and you have backup iron sights. As opposed to an AR with no sighting system, that's more of a liability than an asset. So don't just be the group that has the AR, right? Is it zeroed? Is there redundancy? Have you qualled with it recently? Right? Maybe Jim's got an AR, but Jim doesn't even know how to fix a double feed, and double feeds happen, right? So, is that part of your qualification? Like, you must demonstrate to the instructor that you can fix a failure to fire, a double feed, a bolt override, all those things, right? If you're going to run ARs, because ARs have a lot of different malfunctions, right? If you've been in any kind of like professional gunfighting organization, a lot of times before you even run the qual, they'll mandate that you go through all these steps. Okay, show me how to fix a Type 1 malfunction. Show me how to fix a Type 2 malfunction. Show me a speed reload. Show me a tactical reload. Right? All the guns in the world aren't going to help you if you can't keep those guns running, if you can't run those guns to begin with, if the gun's not zeroed, right? There's a lot that goes into an organized group of people. And that doesn't have to just be with guns. You might mandate everybody has a map and a compass, but you've never had everybody out with a map and a compass, right? Somebody has a lensatic compass and they're holding it in front of them, and they don't realize that their metal belt buckle interferes with the needle. They just think that somehow the needle always points north, and they don't realize that, hey, I've got my handgun appendix carry, which I don't recommend, but I've got my handgun on my side and or my metal belt buckle, and this compass is not going to point north. It's going to point at my gun on my belt buckle. Like, that's like level 1 stuff that you should probably hash out in your organization before stuff actually goes down. Don't just be the group that has stuff, right? I think sadly, a lot of these organizations and personalities, they literally just want to buy tactical stuff. And be honest with yourself, if that's you, just buy and collect tactical stuff. Just open up your own one-man museum of tactical stuff. But don't have some other human being relying on you for help, and you don't know how to use the stuff that you have. Because stuff doesn't save lives. Stuff can be a tool leveraged to save a human life when applied appropriately by a skilled human being. And that's the way you should look at it. Again, I think there's a lot of people in the community that they literally just want to show off cool stuff on Instagram, or they want to buy a bunch of tactical stuff, right? If that's you, then that's fine. Do you. If you want to roll around in a pair of black multicam knee-padded pants, that's fine, but realize they're not going to just somehow get you to shoot good from the kneeling if you don't know how to shoot good in the kneeling, right? Those pants are going to help you shoot good in the kneeling. Those pants might help if you're running up to a barricade, sliding in, getting into a kneeling, and you go down hard on a rock. That's kind of what those are for. But if you can't shoot good in the kneeling to begin with, those pants are going to help you shoot good in the kneeling, right? Just realize that it's not all about stuff. And I guess that's a good place to start wrapping it up here. Hopefully you enjoyed this chat on like forming and equipping mutual assistance groups or militias in 2024. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you listening. If you got any value out of this, if you thought this was worth anything and you want to not just be a freeloader, but you want to actually contribute, don't just value Gucci stuff. You actually value the knowledge and the wisdom that, by God's grace, a lifetime of experience has blessed me to have, and I'm passing it on to you, and you value that, and you want to support it and become part of it, an active part, consider becoming a patron, right? Consider becoming a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. With that, your tactical tip of the day. One thing that's not super tactical, but super practical that you might want to have in your kit, whether it's your small, like, day bag and or your big bug out bag or both, and that's a multivitamin. You may only be able to carry X amount of days worth of food in your pack, but if you have a multivitamin, if you get some other calories, even if they're not great calories, even if it's not a balanced diet, a multivitamin could be a big help. Stop you from getting a lot of illness, a lot of disease. Right? Don't be the guy that's got the Daniel Defense Mark 18 and you're dying of scurvy, because you're not going to be tactical no matter how cool your rifle is. Multivitamins that take up very little space. If you do get some other form of calories, and it's, let's say, an improvised diet, you may be deficient in some kind of micronutrient. So a multivitamin, they take up very little space. If you're taking like a jar of those and not putting them in a bag, put something in there to stop them from rattling around. It could be extra earplugs, could be, cotton batting, could be your fire starting material if you want to double down and just save space, but something so they don't rattle around, because that's not tactical. But multivitamins, I think, often overlooked. You got all your cool stuff. You got your giant fixed blade and your 7 mags, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? You got all the stuff, but you don't have multivitamins. Again, maybe your priorities are a bit askew. Maybe a multivitamin. And don't overlook salt. Salt is a micronutrient that in a modern diet, people, if they eat a lot of processed foods, often get a lot of. But in a non-processed natural diet, salt is a big deal. So, and especially if you live somewhere you're going to sweat a lot, a hot climate, salt is a big deal. So that is another thing. Don't overlook. Your body needs function. Your body needs salt to function. You need salt to live. It's an essential micronutrient. So don't forget about salt. Tactical tips of the day there. Your tactical verse of the day. I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. Come out from among them. Be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, right? Come out from among them. Right. I think, sadly, a lot of people in the prepper survivalist community are like looking for some giant apocalypse, right? Some giant heavenly body falling from the sky, or some actual pandemic or something big. But have you ever considered that maybe you live right now in a dystopian Orwellian future in the present? Look at big chunks of our country where you go to the store and there's some pink-haired transvestite confused about what gender they are, and people just act like it's normal. Are you not living in a dystopian future right now where it's somehow hate speech if you're like, hey, you're a dude, you're not a chick, you're not a woman, you're a man. Some things in life you don't get to pick. Some things in life you don't get to change. You have to deal with what is, not what you wish was. But somehow you'd be the intolerant, crazy one. Do you live in that kind of place? Maybe get out of that place. If you live in a place that's bad now, that's a dystopian crap hole now, maybe don't be there. Do you think it's going to get better or worse when peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan? Do you live in Sodom and Gomorrah? Didn't go well for them. Come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. Now, I'm all for helping people. You should want to help people. But I think that gets turned on Christians and it gets skewed the wrong way. Again, Christ is number one in everything. This podcast is no different. That doesn't mean tolerate everything. That doesn't mean embrace somebody in their sin. That means help somebody out of their sin, right? When Jesus was brought to a woman caught in adultery, he didn't help her go back to the man she was sleeping with to cheat on her husband, right? He didn't do that. He encouraged her, set her free from her sin, drew her out of her sin. He didn't act like her sin was normal. He didn't just, say live your best life. He said go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. If you truly love somebody, the way to truly love somebody is not to embrace their sin, not to help them sin. The way to truly love somebody is to help them be freed from their sin in the power of God. That is to truly love your neighbor as yourself. Thanks, and have a blessed day.